like Teddy Owens. Anybody know Teddy Owens? He's my first cousin. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Who's, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And there, hanging in their stockings, he snarled with a sneer, "Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here." Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, "I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming, for tomorrow," he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They rushed for their toys. And then, oh the noise, noise. That's one thing he hated, the noise. Then the Who's, young and old, would sit down to a feast. And they feast, and they feast, and they feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beef, which was something that the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. I guess he didn't like Who roast beef. And then they do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Who's would start singing. They'd sing and they'd sing, and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop the whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas coming. But how? Great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer, the Grinch looked around. But since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max. You know what? And he took some red thread and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramble-shackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, "Giddy up!" And the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. All the windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, "This is a stop number 1, the old Grinch claws hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stocking all hung in a row. "These stockings," he grinned, "are the first things to go." Now fast, and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed but for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and she said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree?" Why? She was asking why. But you know that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought of it quick. Why, my sweet little tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log from the fire. Then he went to the chimney himself, the old liar. On that walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing, the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's to dump it. Pooh, pooh to the woos, he was graciously humming. They're finding out now that that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's that in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo, boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started out low, then it started to, and it started to
You
grow.
said it, Patricia.
Oh, yes. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Oh my goodness. Oh. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages. It came without boxes or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. His puzzler, I love that. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't thought of before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they'll say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beef.